Hi, I'm Kevin, and this video is going to be the preface for this channel. I'll start by just talking about why I'm doing this. I came to Jesus 3 years ago when I was in a really bad place in my life, and I had some wild dreams one night. And the next morning, I typed into Google, how do I learn about the Bible? Or how do I learn about Jesus? I can't remember which one, but it was one of those. And I clicked the first link I found, and then I was just off to the races. Just kept reading books and listening to lectures and podcasts, and then just reading the Bible, over and over again, and then starting to learn how to read it more critically and how to understand the referencing and how to put individual stories or quotes into the context of the story of the Bible, and how much richer that makes everything that you're reading. And it was through that I came to truly follow Jesus. I grew up going to a church. I didn't really, in hindsight, I didn't really have a strong faith. It was just cultural that you went to church, so I went to church. As soon as I went to college, just all dropped out the window, and like many people, I just went and did my own thing. Maybe delved a little bit into the being like a skeptic, or being like a little anti-religion and stuff like that. Not for any strong reasons, again, making myself sound like I don't have any convictions in my life. But it was 3 years ago that I came to Jesus again. And like I mentioned, the way that I came to him was very academic. It was very learning focused. And I think that gave me a little bit of a unique perspective on someone who can not only be interested in the text just as a literary text or a piece of history, but as a pathway that I took to then align my entire life and my entire purpose and some plans for very drastic changes in my life that are really upsetting what I thought my life was going to be like, but I couldn't have it any other way, because I have so much faith in Jesus and in this story. And all that happened because I wanted to learn about Jesus. And I was very compelled as I was learning more and more about Jesus. Like, alternatively, I think a lot of people have Christianity throughout their upbringing. They take it into their adulthood, and it's kind of the exposure and the repetition to Christianity keeps them there. I think a lot of people also are like me, where they just dropped out, when they go to college or in high school or something, and then they come back to it later from like a political or social, cultural motivation, where they get a little older, they move into the suburbs, they have a family, and it's just the thing to do to go to church. And or maybe even from a more political action kind of standpoint, it's the idea that this is good for our country, and you need to participate in this as a cultural cornerstone of our country. There's probably other ways that people get into Christianity, like experiencing miracles and whatnot. Maybe I fall more into that category. But that night was not the reason that I decided to follow Jesus. The reason I decided to follow Jesus was because I started learning about Jesus, and I really dove into the Bible, and I really dove into how radical this story is, and the idea of what Jesus is was so compelling to me when I was just putting all of the pieces of it together, that I made a conscious decision that I am going to believe this. And I think that's important to say also, because a lot of people will just try to prove Jesus, try to use a lot of proof and say that their faith, which again, faith and proof, just look up in the dictionary. Like faith and proof do not correlate like I think a lot of people think that they do. A lot of people believe in Jesus because, and then what they often do is they just cite proof. But I have never seen a proof that couldn't be reasonably dismantled by someone who's skeptical of that proof. There's a lot of arguments that skeptics and apologists will have with each other, and I am so uninterested in that because it has nothing to do with why I believe in Jesus, and B, I think Jesus says a lot about why that shouldn't be why you believe in Jesus, because you're supposed to have faith, and a lot of the stories allude to the very fact that you're not going to be able to understand, you're not going to be able to prove, and you're not going to be able to stand on anything that makes any sense based on the way that the world works, and then you're going to have to just do it anyway, and it's very hard. And all of that got me very excited because also I am a very abstract thinker. I oftentimes I think better in the abstract than I do in the concrete. I know that like literally shouldn't be true, but it's what it feels like a lot of the time. And I'm very poetic. I like big literary narratives, and I like the stories of heroes, and I believed in those stories too. When you talk about great literary heroes of the past, that have these compelling character arcs and brave stories and things that you want to emulate in your life, I believed in them. I didn't know how to say that belief, but that's the way I would describe it. I believed in them, and I wanted to emulate them. And then this text, the Bible, kind of comes back into my life, and it's saying that here's a story of this incredible person who did these incredible things, said these incredible things, stood for the most incredible stuff you could imagine, and died doing it. I'm starting to delve into wanting to be very specific about the story of Jesus and the theology behind what his story and his death and resurrection all means. But in short, being able to see all of that story and then to have the thought that the claim of this religion is that this is God. And if I want to use just some very rudimentary way of deciding to believe in God, because I really think you decided. And if you haven't decided to believe in something, I don't know how much you actually believe in that thing. And I think that's proof by the fact that so many people who profess to be Christians really don't do anything that Jesus said Christians should do, and in fact often believe and act in ways that are so directly to the contrary of what Jesus told us to do, that it's like, yeah, I don't believe that you actually believe. And I think part of the problem is that you've never gone through these exercises. You've never sat down and forced yourself to learn. You've experienced a lot maybe, and you have a lot of reason for wanting it to be true, but none of that matters if you don't actually believe it. Um, you won't be committed to it. And this is one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing I've ever heard of being committed to. Because the one who was committed to it the most, died on the cross. And then the others who were the most committed were all martyred for it. And I think those stories also can tell us a lot about what this upside down kingdom of Jesus means in this world and what it means to follow. So all of that is to say, I wanted to use AI to go through the Gospels, and I wanted to hear what AI thought about Jesus. I used Google Gemini, and I created a custom gem that had specific instructions, none of which I think were biased at all, although whatever you want to say about Google Gemini, whether it's biased or not, I have no idea. I treat AI as unbiased, because if you say that one of them has bias, then they all have bias. And you either trust them all or you don't trust any of them. And ultimately, I don't care what it says. I'm just very curious about what it says. What of my beliefs will it reinforce? What of my beliefs will it contradict? And I think this is important, because I think it's important for people that follow Jesus to show their faces and talk to the world and talk to each other, and not be afraid of learning and following. And say hello to my cat, who is trying to get onto my lap. Hi. Okay, buddy, there you go. Hang on, do you want to show everybody how cute you are? Oh boy. All right, he's gonna take a nap there. So let's talk about the content and how I made it. I went into Google Gemini. I created a custom gem that was called Lord Have Mercy. I don't know why I thought that was fun, but I still think it's funny, apparently. The description is biblical scholar that teaches about and reflects on the story of Jesus. I don't think that has any, I don't think a description in Google Gemini has any impact on the content that's generated as a result of it. However, the instructions do. And I made the instructions simple, and I made them as unbiased as possible. I was just looking for straight answers. And I said, you are a biblical scholar that will be going through every line of the gospel accounts with me to help me understand the story and impact of Jesus. Seems like a reasonable first statement. I will prompt you with the first book and chapter that I would like to learn about. You will use the NIV, NASB, and NLT translations as your reference. I want to stop here. I said this specifically because I wanted to at least have coverage over 3 very popular translations. I wanted translations that kind of ran the gamut between, like, the New Living Translation is much more like modern language, but sacrificing maybe some of the historical accuracy, to the NIV, which maybe is more in the middle than that, and then the NASB being much more word for word, but maybe not being as historically accurate. Ultimately, I don't think any of that is going to matter as far as the AI is concerned. I don't think it's going to be biased as a result of the translation that you're using, but I just wanted to at least know what the sources were that it was pulling from, because there are translations of the Bible that are just strange, and I didn't want the AI to get confused. I don't know if this would change anything if I took this out. It might not make a lick of difference. Next, you'll go into pretty deep detail analyzing the chapter in the context of the story of Jesus, the historical time period and place it was written in, as well as the important contextual references to the Torah, wisdom books, and prophets when appropriate or relevant, in order to answer 5 primary questions for me. So, stop. These questions are the 5 that I was interested in, and I wanted to keep it relatively short in order to answer what does AI think about Jesus? What does AI think about modern Christianity from the sole lens of what it's reading in the Bible? And then I wanted to know examples of these things that it's learning. So it's going through the different chapters of the gospel. It's pulling out all of the points, all of the information, connecting all the dots, blah blah blah. I wanted to know, can you just give me some either specific examples or just organizations or people or things that I can point to in modern day America that either reflect this or contradict this. And so what I wrote was, the 5 primary questions. 1, what does this chapter tell me about who Jesus was? 2, what does this chapter tell me about what Jesus stood for / what his mission was? 3, how does this chapter inform how Christians should be acting in / engaging with the world today? 4, what is an example of people in modern America exemplifying the story or attributes of Jesus highlighted here? And 5, what is an example of people in modern America exemplifying the antithesis of the story or attributes of Jesus highlighted here? And that was all of my instructions. There's no knowledge added, no attachments or anything. And that was it. I created the chatbot. I could have probably done a better job, but it seemed reasonable. And then I started to feed it just chapters. The first video that I'll show you in just a second, the prompt was Matthew chapter 1. And then it does its thing. Next prompt, chapter 2. Next prompt, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6. It does everything else on its own. Whatever it generated, I wanted to be very independent of anything that I wanted to hear from it. A little note about the modern American examples. That was more just from my own dissatisfaction with what I'm seeing in the followers of Jesus in America nowadays. I kind of alluded to it earlier that most of the people that I meet, they don't know a lot about Jesus, first off. And that's why I think that I'm in a unique position to at least be somewhat of an influence in that world. Just being an example of someone who I came to know Jesus and completely commune with this religion because I was just flat out wanting to learn about the person. And 2, I think that the ways that Christianity is being used for things that are very, very, very opposed to the basic instruction of Jesus, really disturbs me. And it's the epitome of taking the name of the Lord in vain. And to use a kind of grotesque, little more poetic way of putting it, it feels like they have a little It's a John Prine song. Speaking of poetry, a little plastic Jesus. Oh, that's not the John Prine song. Your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore. That's what I'm thinking of. Anyway, it feels like they have a little plastic Jesus that they can put on their desk. And as long as Jesus is sitting on the front of their desk for everyone to see, you don't pay attention to any of the dirty business that's going on behind Jesus, because you have Jesus on the front. So it doesn't matter what you are, it doesn't matter what your business is. As long as Jesus is placed right there at the front of your desk, you're okay. And I have felt that very viscerally as I've looked out into the world, and I don't think enough Christians are being creative enough and passionate enough about contradicting this. And so one way that could be remedied is let's use AI. For however much people trust AI, this will be a litmus test. Here's what AI is going to say about Jesus in pretty significant detail. And I think it's going to be important to pay attention to the patterns, to pay attention to the things that AI keeps coming back to, and that the focuses of Jesus that AI is picking up that maybe we won't pick up because we come to Jesus not from a place of wanting to learn or understand or be like Jesus, but from a place of wanting Jesus to fulfill his role in our life, being that little plastic mascot for all of our sin.